This is the Well Within podcast for women who are tired of managing, striving and second-guessing and are ready to reclaim their power. I'm Jackie.
And I'm Ellie. We're a mother-daughter helping women reconnect to their innate power, even when life is chaotic, challenging and uncertain.
This isn't another self-improvement podcast. It requires readiness and willingness to go to the edge of something different and new, and to notice what's hiding in plain sight.
This space invites you to return to who you were before the world taught you who to be.
And reconnect to your well within.
Because when women reclaim their power, anything becomes possible. In this week's episode of the Well Within podcast, we're joined by change coach Lindsey Elliott. And today we're exploring what really starts to shift when we stop trying to fix ourselves and instead get really curious about what's kind of going on beneath the surface and the impacts that has on all areas of our life. But Lindsey, I'll pass over to you to just introduce yourself briefly and your work and what you do in this space.
Lovely to be here with you. So I work as a coach, predominantly with women, around the topic of letting go of that need to sort of fix ourselves or believe that there's something wrong with us, that sort of constant being on a self-help hamster wheel that we can find ourselves in. And very innocently, because I think most of us who are in that space, in that sort of personal growth space, want to improve ourselves or be the best version of ourselves, if you like, that we can be. But I think that there's also a trap in there that I have seen through my own experience of being in that world, where it's just like it's like the carrot keeps kind of being dangled in front of you, but we don't ever really kind of get to that place of peace. And I spent many decades trying to search for that and eventually found it in the understanding that I know that you explore here. So now that's really predominantly what I help other women to see, really, so that they can also get off of that hamster wheel and that constant feeling of, doubting themselves and not feeling quite good enough and maybe a bit anxious and overthinking, so that they can just be in a really kind of solid place within themselves when they understand their experience and thoughts and feelings in a different way. So that's predominantly what my work is around.
Yeah, so many women we speak to kind of seem to, on the surface, have it all together. They look good on paper. They're successful. They're kind of, functioning. They're really intelligent women, but they, like you were saying, like you did for many years and us too, there's still something going on that is taking them into this, I need to be, if I just do more of X, Y, Z, then I'm sure I'll get there. I'll feel better. I'll feel more or less of, or more easeful, etc. And but when there is this shift, like you were saying, I'm sure we'll get into the conversation. It's almost like they put their feet down on the floor in the morning. It's like, is this really it? Or they're kind of going into conversations where they know that there's maybe going to be conflict, and I don't know, there's just something that they want to avoid, or that they start to kind of notice something. What have you seen maybe from the noticing of the patterns and the shift from trying to fix and trying to sort of manage this experience and not wanting to, sort of, it's almost like not wanting to be derailed or upset, or and then going from that to be just even like a chink in just like a curious look in a new direction? What have you kind of seen the shifts there?
So I think one of the biggest and most profound shifts came for me when I understood thought and feeling we'll just call it as like a package of, kind of experience that we have. When I understood that in a completely different way. So what tends to happen a lot, as I'm sure you have experienced as well, in the self-help world or the spiritual world, is that when a thought comes up or a certain feeling comes up, particularly if they're those that we might have labelled negative or difficult, or we don't enjoy, or we think we can't cope with them, that there's some sort of element of, here's that feeling again, or here's that behaviour again, or here's that pattern again. And it means something about me, who I am as a person when this shows up. And I've also got to manage it and fix it with whatever insert modality that you're currently exploring, which for me was everything from Reiki and energy healing through to, affirmations, meditation, EFT, the whole thing. So we have, here comes this experience that I'm deeming as meaning there's something wrong with me in some way. I must implement the tool or the understanding that I have in order to reverse this or make it go away more quickly or just make it disappear, basically, because I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable with it. But then it kind of keeps coming back round again. So it feels like nothing's actually really getting solved until we kind of think, oh, well, there must be a problem with me, or it must be a problem with how I'm using this tool, or it must be that I need a different tool. And so we go off, this is what I did, go off to a new book or a new workshop or a new training. And after I'd been on this hamster wheel for a couple of decades, I then came across this understanding. And it was really in that, when what this understanding helped me to see was that whole thing, that whole bit of thought and feeling is not who I am. And so it doesn't need fixing. And by its very nature, it is unfixable because it's always moving. Like, it would be like trying to grab water and try to fix that in some way. It's always going to slip through your hands. So therefore, when I could see that this, kind of refer to it as the psychological emotional experience, when I really deeply understood that, oh, that's not who Lindsey is, that's not who I'm the space that can see that happening, and this has a resetting mechanism all of its own. Like, there's nothing for me to manage in this whatsoever. It was like two huge weights were lifted off of me, because I realized that because I'm sure that, like me, you probably hear it a lot, and probably a lot of your listeners hear it a lot when people say, there's nothing wrong with you, you're perfect, you're whole, you're not broken. But when you're in that experience of this, of identifying with the psychological emotional, it really, really looks like you're broken and there's something wrong with you. Otherwise, why do I feel so stressed and anxious and worried all the time, or overthinking, or fearful of saying what I really want, all of that? And of course, we can't endlessly try to play about in that, because it's always moving, it's always changing. But when we can see that for what it is, and therefore we know that isn't who we are, and it's something that's coming through us and we're experiencing, doesn't mean we have to love it, right? As I'm sure you have the same thing. There's certain emotions that show up for me, and I'm still not like, yay, I love feeling this resentment, it's great. But the difference is, I'm not rushing to fix it anymore, because I know it's moving on before I've even noticed it, and it doesn't mean anything about me. And I think it was, so therefore, what I think for me, this understanding was, I could see it was like the understanding of what's happening was the thing that healed it, in terms of not it necessarily falling away. I mean, a lot falls away, but it wasn't that I needed to add something in and manage it and fix it. It was, I needed to understand what's happening here. And then that was what led to the freedom that I now live with. Not all of the time, because we're human, right? But I mostly live in like way more freedom than I used to, as I know you do.
Yeah. And I think it's the thoughts and the feelings, it's the misunderstanding that we think we can control them and change them, and that we are the ones controlling what thoughts we think. But like you say, you can't even, there's nothing to grasp, or it's literally, yeah, like water moving through. It's like, how could we possibly control that? And I think that that's such a, almost like a bit of a buzzword almost in the self-help world. It's like getting control of this, and it feels like something to really have to harness and do. Whereas I think there's sometimes, I know when I came to this understanding initially, it was almost a bit like, this all seems a bit too good to be true, what you're saying. There's nothing I actually have to do. Like, surely I need to be actually doing to feel like I'm changing or moving in the right direction. So you think there was definitely resistance for me to begin with. But yeah, it's like, it's just being more open and just an accepting of what is moving through and what's coming up, rather than that need to like micromanage, fix it, analyze it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is, because when we misunderstand that it is our job to manage it, then it just ends up adding a whole nother layer to the emotional experience
Yeah.
of pressure that doesn't need to be there. So, for example, if we feel anxious and in comes something that our mind is chewing over, feeling anxious about it, and we know that we've got to do some deep breathing or look up at the sky or say some affirmations or remind ourselves of things. And then we do that, and then the anxiety is still there, or maybe it even gets worse, or it only drops a little bit, and then that whole other layer comes in that says, oh, and look, you're getting it wrong. And why do you still feel like this? And other people don't suffer in this way. It's like, and then the thinking just gets layered and layered on top of it without us realizing that it's at the point of the beginning bit of it where we can just be like, oh, okay, here's anxiety. And I know that that can also sound really frustrating to say it like that, because I know, having been through a lot of anxiety, that you really, really don't want it there when it's there. But that's only really because I think we think it's never going to go away. And it means I'm an anxious person. Like, it's all of the meaning that we make of it.
Yeah,
That's kind
exactly.
of what makes it feel much, much worse
Yeah.
than it actually is.
And it's the more we try to control it and try to change it, the harder it sort of feels, because it's giving it more and more layers, isn't it? And it
Mm,
kind of feels way more personal each time we kind of go around that loop of, yeah, the frustration of not being able to get it almost, or get rid of it.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that it means I'm an anxious person, mm,
Yeah,
as an
absolutely.
example, or a depressed person, or a resentful person, or I'm just not measuring up in some way. And it's so ingrained in. We'd probably only have to have our eyes or our social media open for 2 minutes before we've been told there's some
Yeah.
way that we're not measuring up. We literally swim around in it. So it's really seductive to think that I need to be able to manage this psychological, emotional stuff. I need to be able to get a handle on it. I need to be able to improve myself. But I think most people end up coming to this place that we've come to say, well, you just realize that it's not, we're looking in the wrong direction. It doesn't work, in inverted commas.
Yeah, exactly. If it did, you would have already sorted it by now.
Exactly, 100%. There wouldn't be this self-perpetuating, self-help, massive £1 billion, um,
Exactly.
what's the word? I've forgotten the word now.
Industry.
That's the word. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, young
All
brain.
good.
Yeah, exactly. We would all be fixed, right? We'd all be healed. We'd read the book, we'd do the affirmations, we'd, positively think our way into it. And we could, and look, and there's some people who that actually does provide a solution. But really, the people that we are wanting to support and help is for those people who it doesn't. And they know there's something more fundamental and deeper to understand about life and
Yeah.
who we are.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, just I think for me, coming across this understanding, a while ago, there was this sort of, oh my gosh, it was a such a clear shift, this insight that, oh my gosh, life doesn't work the way I think it does. But I also then kind of hung out in this, everything kind of just started to feel more easeful. I felt freer. Y- yeah, just lighter, less weight on stuff. I don't know, but there was still kind of something that I just wasn't being, and I started to see that, just going back to when you were talking about, we don't want these feelings, and why would we want them? But to me, it feels now that they're there for they're quite intentional, really, to see what we're not. What we're not. I mean, who we really are is infinite potential, infinite absolute consciousness. We are everything, and yet this stuff that keeps happening. And it's almost like, why is this happening? Well, it's almost like to show us we're not that. And like you say, we will continue to see it. If you're anxious or you're having a conversation with somebody and it's making you think it's making you feel anxious, it's just going to continue until we see what's actually going on at a deeper level. It's not that person cannot be causing this anxious. We're just in this anxious state in this moment. And if we kind of hang out in it, even, we want to resist it, but if we just kind of sit in it and sit with it, it will pass. It will go. We will see. And for me, it's like, oh, when I did hang out in it, and you have to be quite, I think, robust in that sort of holding yourself in it, which we want to get away from it. And it's almost like there's information in this. Can I hold this information and not push it away or react to it, or just see what is going on? What is it? What is it? And then there's more clarity there within that. Okay, well, what's going on within me that I'm not seeing here? And that was huge. Yeah. And I think helping women, step out of that, it's just our thinking, into why has this been happening? Because we've been swimming in this soup for so long, and we've not been with scratchy glasses on. And the world is telling us, well, we've got to fix ourselves. So when we come along and have this conversation, it seems a bit like, too good to be true. It seems a bit, really? And also it is a bit destabilizing to an identity that thinks it needs to control.
If we're used to believing that voice in our head is who we are, then there is often many moments and even a period of time when I'm working with people where it feels really voidal. Like, well, okay, I've seen I'm not that, but then what am I? And that for me, that's always the most exciting part when we get to that bit, because I'm like, yes, amazing. But if you're, if you don't know that there's this infinite intelligence within you, that's what you can 100% rely on, it makes it really hard to want to let go of believing that we're the mind or the voice in the head, because it feels like, well, how do I navigate my life? Where do I anchor myself? Whereas that's why I think you have to kind of explore it along parallel to each other, because otherwise I think no one's going to want to let go of navigating with the mind if they don't know that they've got this way deeper intelligence that's actually running the show, actually guiding us, with the mind talking about it over the top and taking ownership. But we have to know that, I think. Otherwise it will exactly, to their identity, just feel really scary and like, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to explore that? But again, there's freedom on the other side of it. 100% there is freedom on the other side of that void, for one way to describe it.
Yeah, because there's nothing to protect. It's just, we can move through life with nothing on it. And and I think as well, not trying to sell out services here, but it's almost like hanging out with people that have seen this, and the support, the holding in a conversation when it's feels quite disruptive and quite sort of challenging an identity. Wow, we're always walking this path, because it's a conversation forever and ever. Really, we just kind of start to see more and more of what we're capable of, what capacity, I think, really is available within us. It's always like, why didn't I see this before? It's a completely different, like the rug's pulled from underneath us. And to share this and hold and support, women going through this is it's beautiful. It just feels so, well, this is it,
Yeah. And because I think that's where it's the understanding piece, because also the understanding can continue to deepen, as we all know it does. The clarity with which you can see that life is an inside out job is the degree to which the levels of freedom that you'll have. And I wonder if it might be helpful to talk through a bit of an example maybe of what we are pointing to, because I'm thinking about as in terms of this kind of like seeing that the thoughts and feelings aren't like accurate and telling us who we are, because sometimes I think examples can help to bring it to
Definitely.
life a bit, can't
Yeah,
they?
sure.
So I
Yeah.
was just thinking about someone that I worked with who had a fear of vomiting when she went into shops. So as she would kind of approach the shop, the thoughts would start, and it would be like, "Oh, what if I'm sick in the shop?" The belly mild, and then the further she would get into the shop and be in the shop, the thinking would then ramp up and get very, very insistent about you're going to be sick, and she would almost feel like, even though it wasn't actually happening, she would then start to feel a bit sick, and so she would then exit the shop. So in her, as we all would, in that space of being within all of that really strong emotion, it was obviously to the point of panic a lot of the time, is what was looking real to her was that the thoughts she was having were in some way predictive of what was going to happen. So it was in some way, like all anxiety, able to be a fortune teller, which I think we can fairly clearly most of the time see through that pretty easily. We can see that it's talking about something that hasn't happened yet but might happen. But where it tripped her up was the strength of the feeling. And this is something that I find a lot in terms of people's innocent misunderstandings, because it felt so strong, like the feeling in terms of physically in her body, the sensations that were happening, it made her believe that actually it was more likely to happen. It was more real, and that it also meant that there was something wrong with her, as we have discussed. And so when we explored that, well, actually, what if the strength of that feeling is, number one, it's just a physiological reaction in your body to what the mind is doing, the fear response. But also, what if, this is to your point, Jackie, what if the strength of that feeling is actually trying to show you the misunderstanding that you're in? This is life trying
Yeah.
to teach you that actually how strong that feeling is, because you're believing something that is lying to you.
Mhm.
A, about the fact that you're going to be sick, and B, that you couldn't cope with it. Like
Mhm.
your resilience, and so it's really a strong feeling because it's the
Mhm.
polar opposite of what you actually
Yeah.
are, and it has to get your attention in some way. So this was just life's way of getting this woman's attention through this, constant repetition of this cycle when she was going into a shop. Now, from the outside, anybody who didn't have that thinking would look at that and go, well, of course I can see. Of course, I can see that's not going to happen. You're not going to be sick in every single shop you go into, right? But when it's our thing and we're looking at it through our thinking and our reality, it bloody looks really real, doesn't it? So
100%.
it's just really to see that, and then to see in that experience, as you said, it's really trying to point to what we're not.
Yeah.
You're not the mind, you're not the emotions, you're not this fear limited thing. You are the space in which that is happening. And as
Mhm.
such, that is always safe, even if it doesn't feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. We like to talk about those feelings as almost like, yeah, it's that little red flag
Mm.
or gift to welcome you back and sort of alert you to, okay, yeah, to sort of question and get curious about what's actually going on, and actually, yeah, to see what you're not, so that you can realign to who you actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And to see that that is a temporary thought created experience with a load of feeling and sensation in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we often speak about how the mind is wired for safety, and we've kind of touched on it a little bit with what we were just talking about. But and then it tends to sort of narrow and protect, and can sometimes steer us away from what we actually deeply want. How do you sort of see that showing up, and what do you, or sort of helps someone begin to see that for what it really is?
Yeah, I think the exploring the mind for me is one of those endlessly fascinating things. I know some people it's other things, but I just find it so fascinating, all of the ways that our mind is wired to just try and keep us safe, in terms of things like, sort of physical safety, but also in terms of things like judgment and criticism and procrastination, like all of the ways that it kind of wants to navigate our life for us, if you like, or wants to pretend that it's navigating life for us. And I think that for me, when I'm exploring it, is that when we can see that our personal mind, if we want to call it that. I mean, I think, we have to kind of chop it up, I think, to understand it, but really it's all just one thing happening at the same time. But when we can see that kind of, particularly that sort of like repetitive habitual thinking that we all see, I haven't met a human being who doesn't have some kind of habitual and repetitive thinking. I think when we can start to really notice that, as in how many different soundtracks, if you like, that it plays, I think then it becomes much easier to know that is just the personal mind, let's call it, wanting to keep the biological being going. Doesn't care whether you're happy or not. It genuinely doesn't. It's just down to that. I mean, I love to think of it as like literally a brain sitting on the savannah around the campfire. That kind of like tribal brain. I like to think of it and visualize it like that, because it just helps to remind me that it's only wired to keep the being alive. It's not wired for anything else, but that there is this other capacity of thinking, that inner intelligence that is all of that kind of the creative potential of thought, that is absolutely also always there, but can get really clouded over and not heard within this brain sitting on the savannah looking out for the danger, basically. So I think that when we can really notice the habitual stuff that we've heard 1,000 times before, and then we know that is just like the output of a machine, it becomes way easier, it was for me, way easier to just not pay any attention to it. Whereas that used to be the thinking, the habitual, repetitive stuff that used to get all of my attention. Because I thought, well, it's here again, so I must need attention to it.
Like, it means something.
Why would it be showing? And it's really loud and it's really urgent and it's really insistent. So it really must need to get my attention. Whereas now, if something urgent and insistent shows up, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm really not paying attention to that. Really don't need to, because it is, as you said, Ellie, it's just the brain side of the mind wanting to keep you safe. And again, so much of our suffering comes when we believe that that's who we are, that habitual repetitive narrator in the head is who we are. There's always going to be suffering there, because it's I was going to say it was a lunar shit, but I think that might be a bit strong. Or maybe that's just in my head. I don't know. But it's not balanced, is it? It's not, even though it can really look like that the intellect is the thing that we really need to pay attention to. And of course, sometimes we have to think things through. Of course we do. But it's not actually based in reality.
No.
Much of the time.
No. And I think it's always interesting when, like you said earlier, it's like when you say that thing that you've been overthinking for ages to someone else and they've almost got more perspective on the situation, or they're like, that's absolutely ridiculous. But in your mind, because you've believed it for so long, it's become this big thing. And of course, it feels so real, so personal. And I think that's also sort of why our work comes in as well. It's to help people take that step back and see that it's not personal, but it's really hard oftentimes for people to be able to sort of see that for themselves. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's the thing, is I think when you have sat with enough people, either one-to-one or in groups, and you can see how everybody has pretty much the same flavour of thinking about things. There's variations, of course, but you can really see then that sort of computer nature of one part of our experience of being like, everybody has those kinds of thoughts. They're not personal. They're nothing to do with you. You don't have to pay attention to them. They're literally the output of a machine. And because I think there's so many, I'm sure you've had this experience where clients think they're the only one that thinks that. And I'm like, no, trust me, you're not. I've heard it loads of times and in my own head. And I think that's also really reassuring, though. That's the collective where being in these kind of discussions and understandings with people really helps us to normalize our experience. It's all
Yeah.
really normal and it's all really okay.
Yeah. And I guess what have you seen in clients when you've had this conversation and they're able to start seeing this for themselves? What have that you witnessed that they experience on the other side? We've talked about that freedom, but in terms of the impacts that maybe this has on their relationships or other parts of their life, what have you seen
Yeah.
in that area?
So I think there's what I find is overall there tends to be a general lightening around their day to day. Because I think the thing is, when we're really up in our heads and believing that voice, that narrator that we have to pay attention to, life feels really heavy. So that's generally what I would say across the board happens for people when they really see something about this psychological emotional experience and not being who they are. And then I think there's some examples. So, for example, I can think of one of my clients who had an illness that meant that she had very, very restrictive food issues. And she hadn't been on a family holiday with her family, her husband and her 3 children, for, I don't know, a decade. She'd always stayed in England because she was like, it's too difficult. I'm going to be a pain to them. They're just going to want to go out to eat. They're going to think I'm boring. You know, there was just so much understandable, but anxiety and worry about it. And after we'd worked together that summer, she went on holiday with her family, knowing that some of that anxious thinking was going to come up, but she didn't. And of course, she still couldn't go out to every restaurant, but she still was there for the holiday. She still went. Now, she didn't go out for every meal with them. And yes, she had to take her own food in her suitcase. And yes, that was a pain in the butt for her. And that was also a lot of it was how she was understandably just resenting, why have I got this? You know, so that was also something that we worked through. You know, or another client who, you know, then just suddenly started writing again or actually joined a dating app, even though we hadn't talked about relationships at all. But she just said to me, well, Lindsay, I just went on a dating app and I set my profile up because she wasn't overthinking it anymore. You know, and there's just so many of these examples where when that cloud of that heaviness of that thinking lifts, suddenly the what do I want question can come into play, as in what do I want, that when it's free from all of the worry about what does it mean about me if I do get this or I don't get this, or just overthinking everything and then it's stalling us, making us, you know, hold back from going for what we want. Because I think so often, so for example, with the client with the holiday, she knew that she would go on that experience and it wouldn't be perfect. But she knew that it would be her mind telling how it should be, how it should go. And she knew that she could be with that in a completely different way. And that's why when we can then ask, well, what do I want from a much clearer space? Then we can go for it, knowing it doesn't mean anything about us, whether we get it or not, you know, because we know that there's that space within us that's already contented and okay. And then we get to just have fun in life rather than it being
Yeah.
quite so heavy and serious.
Yeah, definitely. We like to talk about it like the life becomes a playground again rather than sort of this mind made prison that we've kind of created for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
And
need
I
more of
love,
it, don't we?
yeah. And I love when you said about the dating app thing, because it's almost like things we come in with that it feels so solid with one thing, but we don't actually realize, you know, this almost like this spider's web effect that it has on your
Mm,
whole life, and things, everything just starts to kind of loosen and lighten, and we see things can come in that we've kind of never even thought of before. And that just, it's like, oh my God, there's this space, this that's just less constricted and vigilant and tight that, gosh. And I think even that initial recognition is a is like a almost like dipping the toe into a whole new world really of yeah, understanding who we are. And yeah.
I think it's what becomes possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the thing. What looks
Yeah.
possible from the vantage point here of constantly filtering through the mind is going to be, completely different to what looks possible for me when I'm not having to take this mind into consideration, when I'm listening to that deeper intuition or trust or intelligence, whatever you want to call it. The possibility for your life
Yeah.
and how you see yourself can radically, radically change.
Mm-hmm.
And we also all know as well that your existing life just looks totally different. It's not even that you then have to go out and conquer the world, or it might be that actually you're just like, blimey, I've got this bloody wonderful life and I didn't realise it.
Yeah.
Actually, my marriage is way better than I thought it was, or my kids are much kind, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I had another client she would serially leave a job every 2 years, and she was at that point when she came to work with me. And she then, at the end of the time together, she was like, I love this job. I love it. It's great. It's perfect for me. I don't have to go anywhere, because her job did not change, but how she was seeing it, her filter of it was 100% different. And so she realized that she actually, that was the perfect place for her to be. And that's what I love about this. It's like, nothing actually has to change for everything to change.
Yeah.
Love that.
Than understanding.
Yeah. Wow. Great conversation. Yeah. So what we would like to enjoy, we often talk about the well within, obviously, this space, this deeper knowing and grounding that's always reliable, always stable, and full of infinite potential that we've been talking about. So when you feel that you're off track sometime temporarily, which we, like you say, we're human beings, so we're gonna see that. How do you realign to that? You're well within.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I love the well within. I think that is a beautiful way of describing it, and a metaphor, however you're using it. I just think it's a brilliant description. I think the biggest thing for me when I'm off track, and I do get off track because we're human, you're never going to not get off track, is that I know that all I have to do now is just wait. And at some point, that inner intelligence is going to nudge me or help me to see something differently. And I just know, I just 100% know now that whatever is happening in front of me is going to pass. It's going to change without a shadow of a doubt. Even if the situation isn't, I know how I feel about it is going to change. So it might sound like, I don't know, it feels like it's a really boring answer, but actually it's just, I just wait. I just actually don't do anything other than anything that might make sense to me. It might be that I might go for a walk around the block, or I might have a snooze or something like that. But I know that the less Lindsey can get involved, the better.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
love that. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I know that the less I think about myself, the happier I am. So I just let that play out, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of the opposite. It's really just allowing and not trying to think, oh, I must go and do this to kind of get myself out of this mood or whatever. It's just an accepting that it will pass, and you've got the capacity to hold it and sit in it, rather than feeling like it needs to change somehow.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm hearing following the nudge as well, if that feels, sort of the right thing to, and see what's on the other side of the nudge, but without the the identity, the sort of character or whatever in the game as well. It's just like, okay, let's just see, because who knows.
Yeah, because I think, and I think the more that we understand thought and feeling, the more I've been able to identify what is the nudge and what is the mind wanting to get out of its own dilemma. And it's the feeling that comes with it. It's just that thing where it just sort of drops in. That would be good to do now. Go and do this. It's rather than the worrying and the pressure that comes from a mind trying to solve a problem that it's created. It's absolutely just those little inner nudges they're the everyday expression of the fact that we are the same intelligence that's holding the planet in the solar system. Same thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we can rely on that, and I think that's the difference. I know I can rely on that now whereas I didn't know that for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's huge. Even just that in itself is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. I know it sounds naff, but it is actually life changing.
Yeah.
It's 100%
Absolutely.
life changing to know that Lindsey doesn't have to do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much relief in that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Less to do as well, in a good way.
And more time to do what you actually want and what you love.
Yeah, rather than trying to manage how I feel and what I'm thinking and how I'm perceived and all that stuff that
Yeah.
goes on.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a lovely conversation. But if our listeners want to know a little bit more about you or get in touch with you, where's the best place for us to send them?
Yeah, probably either YouTube, which is Lindsey Elliott Coach, or Instagram, which is lindsey.elliott.coach. But yeah, either or website, one of those. But I hang out in YouTube and Instagram mostly.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.